In the era we live in, it's become almost impossible to distinguish who we really are. We're swept up by an endless stream of opinions, trends, and external rewards that seem to guide our every move. What drives us to act? Often, the answer lies in something or someone that has nothing to do with our true self. And that's dangerous. The more we shape ourselves to meet the expectations of others, the more we fragment our own identity. We're no longer solid rocks, but grains of sand, constantly shifting form with every new pressure. Each new adaptation brings a fleeting sense of accomplishment, but little by little, who we are fades away, becoming a mystery even to ourselves. However, there's a way out, a chance to reconnect with what truly matters. Authenticity, which once was a form of personal freedom, is now for sale. The modern paradox is clear: what used to represent uniqueness has been turned into a highly capitalized product. On social media, the concept of being authentic has been distorted into something manufactured, a carefully curated performance designed to please and gain approval. Our vulnerabilities, which should be intimate and genuine parts of who we are now edited and displayed to ensure engagement. In this context, authenticity has become more of a marketing tool than a sincere expression of identity. And so, we find ourselves caught in an almost addictive cycle. With every attempt to be more ourselves, we drift further away from the truth. The trap lies in how this manufactured authenticity is disguised as freedom. We want to be accepted, but acceptance comes at a price. The price of adapting our personality, our behavior, and even our emotions to meet the invisible expectations around us. Behind the mask of authenticity, there hides a new kind of conformity. We follow imposed standards, yet believe we're being original. And all of this happens without us realizing just how much the quest for public approval pulls us away from our essence. Each like reinforces the behavior, and little by little, we forget to question whether what we're showing truly reflects who we are or just what we think others want to see. Talking about self-sufficiency in this context isn't simple. It's not a ready-made formula or an answer that can be easily applied. If there is a way to escape this digital trap, it lies in the ability to distinguish between the imposed authenticity and the one that emerges from a true connection with oneself. Self-sufficiency here is less about isolating oneself from the outside world and more about the ability to think and act independently, to resist the invisible pressure to please at all costs. This doesn't mean ignoring the world, but rather maintaining integrity amidst the chaos. In a world where even our vulnerability has been commercialized, true freedom may lie in learning to silence the outside noise so we can hear our own voice. The digital age has brought about a peculiar phenomenon. We've never been so connected, yet so fragmented. Each platform demands a different version of who we are. On Instagram, we show the most glamorous and light-hearted side, a sort of shop window that's carefully arranged. On LinkedIn, we wear the suit of professional perfection, as if there were no flaws or vulnerabilities. On Twitter, many of us release quick opinions and impulsive reactions, almost like an instant reflection of our mind. But in the end, the inevitable question lingers: who are we, really? This digital fragmentation reflects something bigger, a crisis of identity that goes beyond the screens. The feeling of being multiple, divided between roles and expectations, isn't just virtual, it seeps into our real lives. The pressure to fit into different contexts drives us to build these versions of ourselves, but in the process, we end up getting lost among so many characters. Each digital mask we wear moves us further away from our core self. And the more we click, the more our personalities seem to disconnect, like pieces of a puzzle that never fully fit together. Self-sufficiency, in this case, isn't the easy solution of just be yourself. It requires a conscious effort of reconstruction, a process of identifying and unifying these scattered parts of who we are. It's about actively resisting the urge to fragment ourselves to fit into every social or digital mold. It's a deliberate choice not to let external demands define us, but to seek a cohesive self, even in a world that insists on dividing us. The fight for self-sufficiency here is a fight for integrity, a continuous effort to allow all these parts, flaws, achievements, impulses, to coexist in harmony, without needing to be fragmented to meet expectations. Modern activism presents itself as a collective force for social change. Groups organize around noble causes, fighting for rights and justice. But behind this momentum, there's a paradox. The very structure that promises freedom and inclusion often turns into a new form of conformity. It's a kind of formatted rebellion, where questioning the internal rules of the movement can be seen as a betrayal of the cause. What starts as a fight for the diversity of voices ends up, in many cases, stifling the individuality of its own members. This dynamic isn't new. Thoreau, in his essay Civil Disobedience, already warned about the dangers of blindly following the majority's impositions. True freedom, he suggested, doesn't come from automatically adhering to collective values, but from a conscious and courageous resistance to what threatens our autonomy. However, in today's times, this inner resistance seems harder to practice. The pressure to remain loyal to certain ideals, the fear of being labeled a traitor or reckless, causes many to suppress their personal doubts in the name of a greater good. But does this unquestioning loyalty compromise the very essence of what it means to be free? The true revolution might not only lie in joining large movements, but in finding the balance between collective struggle and preserving one's own sense of autonomy. This requires the courage to say no when something doesn't resonate with inner truth, even if that disagreement causes discomfort within the group. This personal autonomy could be the most radical revolution of all. What's the worth of a cause that demands your voice but, at the same time, deprives you of the freedom to think for yourself? We're immersed in an era where access to information has never been so vast. Yet, the more we know, the harder it seems to discern what really matters. It's as if we're surrounded by a sea of data but without a clear map to navigate. With each new piece of information consumed, there's a feeling that something else needs to be learned, that a definitive answer is still lurking, waiting to be discovered. In this process, we lose something fundamental: the ability to trust our own judgment. Self-sufficiency, in this context, becomes challenging not because of a lack of knowledge, but due to an excess of it. The constant flow of opinions, studies, and theories leaves us overwhelmed, weakening our connection to our intuition. We feel compelled to keep seeking more, as if the next answer might finally give us the clarity we're searching for. But in the middle of this information maze, the real difficulty lies in knowing how to filter, how to separate the noise from what's essential. It's not just about accumulating knowledge, but developing the ability to discern what's relevant for our growth and for the decisions we make. This process requires a critical mindset and, above all, confidence in one's own ability to synthesize. It's not about gathering answers, but about cultivating the wisdom to know which questions are worth asking. As we learn to silence the excess and listen to our own voice, self-sufficiency stops being a distant idea and becomes a daily practice. This is the real challenge of the information age, not just knowing more, but knowing what to do with what we already know. There's a common belief that self-sufficiency must be achieved in isolation, as if personal growth were a solitary process, disconnected from the surrounding environment. But in an interconnected world, this view can be limiting. The true power of self-sufficiency lies in the ability to maintain individuality while actively navigating and participating in the collective. It's not about choosing between the I and the we, but understanding how the strengthening of one feeds the other. After all, how can we contribute genuinely to a group if we don't know who we are outside of it? Thriving communities don't demand that their members erase themselves. On the contrary, they are those that can integrate different perspectives and skills without forcing individuals to follow a single mold. In this kind of environment, self-sufficiency doesn't weaken the collective, it strengthens it. Each person who stays true to their essence, without yielding to the pressure to conform to external standards, contributes in an authentic and unique way to the group's growth. It is in this balance between personal autonomy and healthy interdependence that the true strength of a community emerges. Even so, this dynamic requires a delicate balance. The pressure to adapt, to please, or to follow the group's conventions is constant. Self-sufficiency, in this sense, becomes an essential tool to avoid the dilution of individuality. It's an act of resistance, a conscious choice not to get lost in the crowd. However, this resistance isn't about distancing oneself, but rather a way to create deeper roots, both within oneself and within the surrounding environment. When each individual can be authentic and self-sufficient, the collective not only sustains itself, but grows in harmony, reinforcing the importance of each thread in this complex social web. True revolution happens quietly, when we learn to maintain our integrity while helping others do the same. Collective growth doesn't cancel out the individual, it is only possible when each person, in their uniqueness, contributes fully. And this mutual exchange of strengths, between the I and the we, is what gives meaning to this journey. In a world that values efficiency and control, we are encouraged to plan every detail of our lives, from small daily tasks to large long-term goals. However, this obsession with planning can end up trapping us. What started as a tool to organize and ease anxiety ends up creating another form of pressure, the constant need to foresee, control, and manage every aspect of our existence. Life, however, rarely follows the script we've laid out. The more we plan, the more we close ourselves off to the unexpected, creating a barrier between us and the possibilities that arise spontaneously. The paradox of overplanning is that it promises control but delivers anxiety. We're always afraid that something will go off track, leading us to try to control even more. Every detail that doesn't fit into the plan becomes a source of frustration, making us question our own competence. But is total control really possible? Self-sufficiency, in this context, doesn't mean eliminating planning but knowing how to balance it. It's about understanding that flexibility is just as important as structure. When we let go of the illusion that we can control everything, we start to discover our true capacity for adaptation. It's not about being passive in the face of the unexpected but trusting that we can handle it when it arises, without losing our internal stability. Excessive control, besides creating tension, disconnects us from the present moment. We become so obsessed with what is supposed to happen that we lose sight of what is happening now. This disconnection affects our ability to make more conscious decisions and, paradoxically, weakens our self-sufficiency. The ability to adapt to unpredictable circumstances, to change course when necessary, is a much more powerful form of control than overplanning. True freedom lies in knowing when control needs to be relaxed. Like a current flowing around rocks, self-sufficiency involves the ability to navigate life's twists without being swept away by every unforeseen event, but also without trying to force the path. When we manage to balance planning with flexibility, we discover a more fluid and authentic way of living. This balance, in the end, is what allows self-sufficiency to flourish, not as rigidity, but as a resilient force that keeps us grounded, no matter what comes our way. There's a powerful force that pushes us, almost invisibly, away from who we truly are. Whether in the digital world, where our identity fragments into multiple personas, or in society, which invites us to follow ready-made standards, the challenge of maintaining our authenticity is constant. And it's precisely in this setting that self-sufficiency emerges as a shield, not to isolate us, but to strengthen us, allowing us to pass through the noise without losing our essence. The pressure to conform has never been so intense. With every choice we make, every decision taken under the gaze of an invisible audience, we risk losing something fundamental. And the only way to resist this is to act now, while we can still reclaim who we are. Sharpening this inner sword, this ability to discern what is truly ours amidst the expectations of others, is a continuous and vital process. There's no room for procrastination. Every moment counts. Despite all the challenges, reclaiming our authenticity brings about a powerful transformation. When we free ourselves from the chains imposed on us, we begin to see more clearly who we truly are. And this fight isn't just about preservation, but about reclamation. Rescuing our soul, our essence, is a process that strengthens us and prepares us to live fully, without interference, without masks. This is the true act of freedom, a quiet, yet profound, movement of personal affirmation.